Welcome, listeners, to www.ironradio.org, the website and podcast for all things strength sports and sports nutrition. Thanks for listening.
Good morning, everybody. You are on another episode of Iron Radio. It's Phil Stevens here. I am a strength coach, powerlifter, Highland Games athlete, youth football coach, and a bunch of other stuff. So,
cool. This is Dr. Mike Nelson, creator of the Flex Diet Cert, which opens again June 17th. Associate professor at the Carrick Institute, and still down here working in kiteboarding in South Padre, Texas.
Right on.
Yeah.
And this is Lonnie Lowry. I am a professor of exercise physiology and nutrition for about 25 years, former competitive bodybuilder, now working on some books, stuff like that.
Yeah, first, before I forget it, I want to give everybody a shout out. I have a seminar coming up in Bozeman, Montana, July 6th and 7th. If anybody's interested in going, it is at Prime Therapies, so it's a training hall and physical therapy place. Give me a ring, 406-599-9518. Come join us. 2 days of fun. So, other than that, yeah, so I competed last weekend. It's the first time I've competed in anything since, it's been a year. So I think it was this competition last year. And it went good. The day started out chilly, but it ended up being a beautiful day. It was like 65 and sunny, so it was perfect. Like usual, it was a long-ass day. But started out in the first half of the day, didn't go quite as planned. I did okay. I was middle of the pack in like everything. And then, so what did we start? We did traditional order. So stones, I think I came in third there out of a group of a dozen or so. Stones, weights, hammer we did before lunch. And hammer I really shit the bed in. I decided to wear my hammer boots, and we haven't practiced with hammer boots at all. So I don't know why I decided to wear them. And it just threw my throws way off. I was 15 feet behind where I normally throw. And my training partner actually beat me for the first time in his life at those events. So I was stoked for him.
Hey, Phil.
Yeah.
Let me. What are those boots? Can you describe those to everybody?
Basically, for Scottish hammer, for Olympic hammer, or what you see in the college ranks and everything, it's a big ball on the end of a piece of metal wire, and you spin in a circle. For traditional like Olympic hammer, for Scottish hammer, you have traditionally it's like a rattan handle. We use PVC now just because it's easier to get a hold of and cheap. So it's a stiff handle, and you stand in one place with your feet planted, and the weight spins over your head and around you. And, I used to throw without boots all the time, and I actually threw really well. But you get to the point where you're spinning the hammer so hard that Highland Games athletes take a pair of boots, and they basically add a foot-long metal spike on the end of them and shove those into the ground, and they anchor you to the ground.
Oh, mm-hmm.
To keep you grounded, because when you're spinning a 22-pound weight, the inertia ends up pulling you. And it's just a little different throw. I'm used to my feet being able to move and catch my balance, and I was just off. Like I should have practiced with them if I was going to wear them in competition. And so, yeah, you just shove this foot-long spike into the dirt, and it anchors you in, unless we see it all the time, like a boot comes loose and somebody ends up on their ass. But
right, yeah, I got it.
Yeah, you just toss it behind your head. So, and that's the same. Like stones is, just to explain the events to everybody, stones is, there's Braemar stone, which is roughly 26 pounds compared to the Olympic shot put, which is about 16. And it's a standing, there's no movement on that event. It's a standing in place, throw the stone as far as you can. You can like squat down and then spin in a circle following the throw, but there's no movement before the throw, no movement towards the trig. And then open stone is more like your traditional shot put. You can move. You can do a glide, or you can do a spin, or whatever you want to do. And it's a lighter weight, right, roughly around 16 pounds. Every field's different because we're literally using natural rocks. So they have a variance. It needs to be in between 14 and 18 pounds or whatever. So they got to go find a rock in between 14 and 18 pounds. And so every field like keeps their stone for generations. So, okay, I'm going to Wichita, we're using that stone. And so each stone there's sets of world records And then every field has field records to go along with their implements because there is small variation in implements. So you can set field records. But I've always sucked at stones, and especially because now more than ever. When I started, you weren't competing against. It was just when I started. We call it the Fat Kid Olympics, because most Highland Games athletes were big. There was only one class until the last 10 years or so, and they added in a lightweight. We call it the Fat Kid Olympics. And then all of a sudden, these ex-collegiate throwers found the sport and figured out it was something they could do following their, 1 in a million go on after college to the Olympics or something. So there was this huge pool of good athletes, and they found Highland Games, and Highland Games is one of the only sports. It is basically the only strength sport that you could essentially make a living at, or at least get to travel free and stuff. Because once you're a pro, you're paid to go. I know Matt Vincent was making good money when he was doing Highland Games at a pro level. Bramer stone, and the weights for distance is kind of like an Olympic hammer. So it's a weight with a metal handle on the end of a chain. And for those, you can spin. They're just much heavier than the Olympic hammer. So you're talking 28 pounds for the lightweight, 56 pounds for the heavy. And you're throwing those for distance. And like I said, I did okay in those, just not great. But for me, it's always that first half of the day. If we're running traditional events, if I can stay middle of the pack, I usually know I'm doing okay. Because like I said, I'm throwing against a bunch of people that have throwing backgrounds. So anything that they're not static and stuck to the ground, I usually get beat in because they have 20 years of experience of spinning in circles ahead of me and throwing experience. But then once we get to the static events where feet are just in one place, I usually do good because strength can play a bigger factor. So I was middle of the pack after lunch. Then we did lunch, and then I did well. I won the events I thought I'd win, which was caber, weight over bar, and sheaf. And it was fun. It was another one of those days on sheaf because I know that I'm, like in practice, my 20th throw is my best in sheaf. And it's by far my best event. So I always enter way early, whereas most people don't. Like if they know they're going to throw 30 feet, they'll enter at like 26. You can enter whenever you want. And I always enter at like 18. And so it's inevitable I get a bunch of people, and there was one there that day. Like there was one dude that I didn't say anything to him, but he's like, okay, it's our last event. And he's like, I'm in second, and if I win this event, I can take first. And he's like, my best throw is 32 feet. And I started 18, and I generally just throw it hard enough to get it over. So I got to start off throwing really light, and then as the bar goes up, I throw a little harder. So I started 18, barely cleared it, and on up. We get to 26 feet, and that's when I started throwing hard. So I threw it like, at 26 feet, I threw it like 8 feet over the bar. And he's like, oh, shit. He said, what's your best? Because he's planning on winning this thing and walking away. I was like, well, it's 32 like yours. He's like, oh, shit. And I ended up winning that event. So he kind of put a damper on his thing of taking first, so he ended up taking second. But yeah, all in all, it's a great day. I mean, we couldn't ask for better weather. And like any Highland Games, it's if you want to know what it's like to be treated like an athlete, like a higher end athlete, like Highland Games is the place to go. Like they're going to feed you. They cater to you, unlike other sports. So you get you pay your $35 to enter, you get a shirt, you get food, you get drinks, you get, because you're basically the entertainment inside of a fair atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
Like this one is at a Renaissance. Some of them are at big, like Arizona, which I've thrown at a few times. Phoenix is a big Scottish, I don't know what you call it, convention, whatever. Festival, yeah. So all the clans from around the country come there. So you'll have 30,000 people there. And you are the entertainment for the weekend. And there's booths and stuff, but that one's is a really fun one because it is very Scottish based. And all the clans come up and they like pick out athletes they like and cheer for you. And
oh, cool.
So yeah, you'll get unlike powerlifting and Olympic weightlifting where it's like your significant other and your child who have to be there are there. there are actually people that pay to come watch on purpose.
Who don't know you.
Who don't
Yeah.
know you and then cheer for you.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was funny during Sheaf, the other guy I was going against, it ended up with me and him at the end, and he had, they have the socks that are printed on. He had socks that said Beefcake on them. So nobody knew his name. So every time he'd come up, they'd cheer Beefcake. And then, they're like, well, we can't call Phil. So it ended up being the crowd cheering Beefcake for him and Stud Muffin for me. So it was Beefcake versus Stud Muffin at the end. And there was 100 little kids like, come on, Stud Muffin.
Oh my God.
So it's a fun atmosphere, and you can play off the crowd. And that's part of it is, it's like people don't know this. Part of going pro is just that. It's the showmanship you can do. Like they urge us to interact with the crowd. And I always do that, and it's mainly kids. So I knew we were coming on the Sheaf, and there were a bunch of kids around, so I went and bribed them all. I was like, I need you guys to do me a favor. And it's like, this is the next event. I've got somebody I'm going up against. It's going to be hard, and this is my favorite event. I bribed them all to cheer for me. So my wife was like, who's all these kids cheering for you? How do they know you? I was like, I don't know them. I just came up and asked them to. So
you're just that famous among the 9-year-old crowd.
But it gets the crowd involved, and it's a blast. And as an athlete, it's more fun for me, to get everybody cheering loud. So, yeah, it was a good day. I walked away whole. I've got a little sciatic issue going on since then, but nothing bad. Nothing bad. Walked away in one piece, but it's a long day, man. It was like 9 hours of throwing. It's 9 events out in the sun. So you're pretty zapped after it.
I can imagine.
Yeah, but it was good. It was good to get onto the field again, and it kind of lights your fire to, let's keep going. That was fun. I need to work on this. So,
the social thing, you told a story about drinking and all the socializing and cheering and all the stuff that happens. That's, like you say, you're getting treated like a pro athlete in a way, but it just seems more, it just seems better than like everybody gets a participation trophy that's all the same size. That kind of is your participation reward.
Yeah, it is.
It's just to be cheered on and have all the fun with it and that kind of stuff. It's just a better way to do that, I think, than everybody gets a trophy the same size as the first place dude.
Yeah. And they're very traditional in giving away trophies. Like I ended up, normally I'm in first, second, or third. I took fourth because I stunk up the first half of the day. And what showed me the differences in our generation is like afterwards, my daughter's like, well, where's your trophy? I was like, I took fourth. There ain't no trophy for fourth.
Right. Right. And I'm okay with that.
It's first, second, and third. You get something to take home. Oh, really? Well, in ours, it's like out to 32nd place. I was like, yeah, no, that ain't happening. I said, we're masters. We were all 45 plus. We don't expect a trophy.
No, right. It's not an extra.
No, and we had one guy, he just turned, we were with the 40-year-olds were with us too. So he just turned 40 and he had been competing in open class. And as it was first masters, he's like, I'm staying here. You guys are fun. And it was like at our age, we're literally out there just cheering for each other.
Right.
And it's a different group. It's like, we're all just happy to be out here, man. And still doing it. If we win, we win. If we don't, we don't, So
everybody against Father Time and gravity.
Yeah, exactly. And we had, normally at this games, there's a group going all the way up to 75 to 80 age group. So it's awesome. It's awesome seeing some of those guys out there, still doing it. And it's like, man, I can do this too. Like they're still stepping on the field at that age. So it was good times. Good times. We'll train for another one. I don't know what the next one will be, but at least the same field in the fall. But
okay, switching gears. I have 2 papers. Just get your guys' analysis here, commentary on from sort of the nutrition world, supplement world. And you know what? I know you're talking about a little bit older athletes. These are both about older. I didn't do this just because I'm older now, because I think a lot of people who listen to Iron Radio, they're like, you guys are just a bunch of curmudgeons now. It's like, well, you know what? Give yourself 20 years. I mean, we've been doing this podcast since 2009.
Yeah.
So
we've been doing this podcast longer you've been lifting.
That's right. So there's that. Anyway, this is the association between fish intake and serum testosterone levels in older males. This is Japanese men. It says the cross-sectional study included 1,545 Japanese males aged 60 to 69. So older than me, for what it's worth. That's older than me. Fish intake was estimated using just a diet history questionnaire, and they're trying to explore fatty fish and lean fish. And most of this little introduction was mostly about stuff like, well, for example, they talk about low testosterone levels are no bueno, right? They're connected to dementia, diabetes, all-cause mortality, that kind of stuff. And then they talk about what's good and potentially bad in fish, mostly what's good. So fish contains vitamin D, omega-3s. Like, for example, it talks about animal studies show omega-3s promote luteinizing hormone, stimulated testosterone synthesis. So, basically LH tickles your testes to make some testosterone. It says in humans, clinical trials have demonstrated supplementation with fish oil that's rich in N3 PUFAs, so your omega-3s, or vitamin D, increase serum testosterone levels in males. It says one study in 178 middle-aged male boat captains showed fish consumption was positively correlated with serum T. So kind of, supportive of fish as far as serum T. It doesn't really mention specific contaminants. At least I didn't do the super deep dive. But I'm assuming, some of the animal data, like heavy metals, mercury, and stuff like that, can screw with your T, if I remember right. Anyway, results. Higher total fish intake was associated with higher levels of serum T, with an adjusted mean, it says, 5.63 units for the first and fourth quartiles of total fish intake. So this is saying nanograms per mil. I often look at this in nanograms per deciliter, so I'm not sure. But if this is 6 on the typical 1,000 scale, this is very modest. Again, I'll have to go revisit some of these units, but it looks like a modest positive effect, which is what you might guess. I mean, it's not like you're going to eat fish all day and be huge, muscularly huge. But it says when analyzing fatty and lean fish separately, higher intake of lean fish, but not fatty fish, was associated with higher serum testosterone. And that was their conclusion. Among older males, higher intake of total fish, particularly lean, was associated with higher serum T. Now, that kind of goes against their hypothesis, I think, because the fatty fish you think would be higher, obviously, in like omega-3s and vitamin D, and which is, of course, a fat-soluble vitamin. But kind of a suggestive, go eat lean fish. Make sure it's still part of your intake if you're not allergic or anything like that. So sometimes I have to remind myself that because I default to chicken and beef a lot. Mm-hmm. So I just remind myself, salmon or cod. Tilapia is cheap, or certainly cheaper than a nice thick cod fillet. But yeah, I got to remind myself, go eat your lean fish. Obviously, it's a great protein source. So,
yeah. Another tip is typically in the frozen food section, you can get some pretty good fish selections that are pretty decent and may be significantly cheaper than fresh, depending upon your location and where you live, too.
Right on. Yep. Now, Mike, I know you've gone so far as to go out on a boat fishing for the fatty fish, I think, right? Mm-hmm. But
yeah, we tried salmon. My uncle lives in Alaska, so we went up there halibut fishing many years ago. And then even last year we got lucky. Good buddy of mine, shout out to Tim. We were going through Colorado. He happened to be moving back to Alaska with him and his wife, Kathy. And he's like, "Hey, do you want any salmon?" We're like, "Yeah." And he's like, "If you want to stop by our house, we'll just give you a bunch." I'm like, "Really?"
Wow.
He's like, "We don't have any room to take it, and we're going to Alaska to fish, so we'll have plenty of salmon." So we got a little freezer box, and we found a way to jam it in the car, and got it home, and it was amazing. Yeah.
I think the sheer amounts, when you go harvest things from nature yourself, like you're doing things in dozens of pounds.
Oh, yeah.
Just amazingly different than we're used to in the grocery where they're charging you, buku bucks for little 4-ounce fillets or something.
Yeah. We got lucky when we went halibut fishing. Both my wife and I brought back a 50-pound box of halibut. And I think we ended up, we caught 250 pounds over 6 days, I think. So, we were also super lucky. And my uncle lives in Alaska, so he knew the places to go. He told us what time of year to come, and he's lived there his whole life. So that actually made a huge difference. Or if we just tried doing it on our own, I'm sure we got nothing.
Right. Phil, you live off the land a lot. Do you get much fish, or are you eating stuff like, your sheep and goats and stuff?
I do that too, but no, it's definitely, I was just talking about with my wife yesterday. It's like, it's time to go fishing. It's getting to that point. Yeah. And me and my son will go out. He's just not at the age yet to where he can go hunting with me.
Safely, yeah.
He's just not there, you know. Like I can't have him sit in a deer. He won't shut up, so he can't sit in a deer blind
Right.
and things like that. And then I just can't trust him with a firearm yet. He doesn't get it, and I understand that. He's 8.
Yeah.
So, but he'll go fishing with me, and we'll catch. You know, we'll go out and put things in our freezer. So I try to get as much as I can off the land.
Yeah.
I enjoy it, and I think for kids, it gives them something they don't get today. Like, oh, food doesn't come in a package at the store.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. It gives them a greater appreciation, and there's less waste of food when a face is tied to it. You know, I mean, it's
because you respect it.
Just
Yeah.
It's like, man, we're going to use every bit of this, and that's one thing we teach. Like, try to use every bit of every animal. That's even our sheep. Like, we sheared them 2 weeks ago, and my wife and son are now making things with all the wool. They're like, we're going to try this. You know, we try to use everything we can.
That's cool.
Like people used to. You know,
right?
So I can't tell you how many hides I have hung up. I have no clue what the hell I'm going to do with them. But it's like, I'm going to save them, figure out something to do with it.
You're like that show on History Channel, that Mountain Men. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah. I just don't know how to process them like them. So,
right.
I mean, I've taken a couple hides now, and it's like, man, they make it look so easy. But, yeah.
Funky leather coat will know where it came from.
That's right. Are you catching bass, or what do you go?
Yeah, yeah, bass, crappie, channel cat, you know, freshwater fish. And for the fatty fish, it's like my favorite is catfish. And it's a mild, fattier fish, and essentially it's just like any fish. Like the store bought farm raised is so much different than wild caught. And yeah, I mean, we have a place where I have a spot that I take my son and friends, and like we always get our limit within couple hours, so it's great.
Oh, nice.
That's awesome.
But there's less people fishing now, and that's the same thing with hunting. Like the wildlife and parks around here are like forcefully trying to get their starting programs to get more people to do it, because the population of animals has skyrocketed and the number of hunters has fallen. So we're getting overpopulated in fish, in animals, and like, guys, we need to do something about this deer population. They're wrecking havoc. They're going unchecked, and that's one thing that like many eco-friendly people don't realize is like, okay, well, we've done away with all their predators, and we were their last predator, and we're not preying on them anymore. So, like, I went out to my buddy. He owns a 500-acre farm, and they raise sweet corn, so human edible corn, not field corn. And he had to get a tag. The state gave him a tag to harvest like 70 deer, because we drove out into his field and there were 300 deer.
Right.
And he's like, they're just wrecking.
Promised land.
They're just wrecking his crops, you know, and their population. So, yeah, and he's like, just get them, you know, just please. And it's like, because the population is just way over, unchecked, out of numbers that are acceptable. So
right on. No, I mean, I routinely, in fact, this week, I'll have 3 or 4 deer in my backyard. Mike, you've been to my house. I mean, I live in suburbia. Yeah. This is not, I do not live in the middle of rural Montana.
Yep.
I mean, this is Northeast Ohio. It's mostly, you know, suburbia and small cities. And I routinely go out, and they're so tame, they just look at me.
Yep.
You know, I mean, I hear about people like, oh, yeah, I bagged a deer. I'm like, I could do that with a handgun at close range.
Block them over the head.
I could bag 3 or 4 almost every week. Yeah, because there's just so many of them.
Yeah, and nobody's hunting them anymore. And I mean, it's good. It's good, lean meat. You know, I mean, we love it. I just turn everything into hamburger when I get animals, and it's like, you can't tell the difference. We'll make stews, make chili, we'll make spaghetti, we'll make.
Right on.
Venison steaks are pretty good. Your buddy could have a side business selling corn-fed deer.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Turkeys at home. The turkeys are crazy.
Yeah.
I walked on a walk the other day when I was at home, and there's 2 turkeys just hanging out on somebody's porch in a townhouse complex. Just like it's going to go ring the doorbell or something.
Yeah.
And you walk by and it just stares at you. I'm like, oh my God.
It's like Phil was saying, there's just the overpopulations because the predators are not the same.
And we aren't the same. Like, let's be real. We're the main predator, and nobody's doing it. Like, this next generation coming up is, like, it's not being passed on.
Yeah. I mean, financially alone, the sheer amounts, when you get dozens of pounds of lean meat, that's a huge score for a lot of people.
Yeah. Like the deer I took this winter, it cost me, $25 for a tag and then $1 for the bullet. So $26, I got 150 pounds of meat.
Wow.
That's pretty freaking cheap.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And I mean, let's face it, when we talk about like lean meat consumption, like this fish, I'd have to look at other kinds of lean meats, but look at cultures that really live on hunting and fishing kind of thing. Often they're very lean. And I mean, there's physical activity, there's lots of control things, but probably if you're interested in physique, it's not a bad way to live.
Yeah. No.
If you're watching calories, like, venison is very lean. Most game meats, elk, everything else, usually you have to add fat to make hamburger and stuff because it's just too lean.
Right. Yeah. Okay. This other one is also seafood related. This is about mussel, mussel. So, little mussels. The effects of green shell mussel powder on physical performance, subjective pain symptoms, and function. This is in knee osteoarthritis patients. It's a 6 months randomized double-blind placebo trial. It says the study aimed to determine whether green shell mussel powder was more effective than placebo in improving physical performance and subjective measures and symptoms, functional kinds of things as well in adults with early signs of knee osteoarthritis. So arthritis is something I'm dealing with big time. So that's what caught my eye with this. I think anybody who, regardless of what you might hear, I mean, because you might hear, I'm sure I've read before the NSCA says, heavy resistance training doesn't really worsen osteoarthritis. I got to beg to differ. Maybe I'm just predisposed, and so many people I know are predisposed, or maybe they're defining heavy different than the way I did it, with my whole body shaking under a barbell, because I'm not a big person, but I see a lot of sort of joint degradation, if you will. It says the researching osteoarthritis and GSM, that green shell muscle study, 6 months study, adults 55 plus, screened for signs of osteoarthritis. Let's see what we got here. 3 grams of whole GSM powder or placebo, which was pea protein daily. And they just did ADL stuff, right? This is just activities of daily living. 30-second chair stand, stair test, 40-meter fast-paced walk. And then I did like subjective pain scales and stuff. Visual analog scale symptoms showed significantly greater reduction in the percentage change for the green shell muscle powder than for placebo. Further, there was some trends. Trend for improvement in the 40-meter fast-paced walk. The people who are heavier, and again, a lot of our listeners, BMI over 25, that's not really saying a lot. I mean, I think, we're all around 30-ish. Phil, you're more than that. Mm-hmm. Those with BMI over 30 consuming the muscle powder showed a trend for improvement in some of these it's the knee injury and osteoarthritis outcome score. So these sort of scales that are about pain and symptoms outside of pain. I guess that means probably stiffness and that kind of stuff. So conclusions, they concluded that consumption of GSM, again, this green shell muscle powder, has potential to alleviate symptoms and improve functionality as you get older. So it's the first I've ever heard of this green shell muscle. So I don't even know what would be in there. I'd have to go see what kind of specific zoo chemicals, or I don't know what would be in there that might be at work here. But something people could keep on their radar, I guess, is yet another extract or supplement that might help with joints. And so that's what I got. I got fish and I got mussels this week. I don't know why. They just both happen to be seafood related things, but I don't know if you guys have ever heard of like shellfish as far as joint health or whatever.
I haven't, but it reminds me a lot of my time in Thailand, because there was a big push by the government there to well, they did numerous cool things, but there was a big push by the government to not lose, in the day of like Western medicine spreading anywhere and medications, pharmaceuticals. There was a big push by their government to not lose their traditional homeopathic methods, like collecting all these mushrooms and herbs and things. So there was a culture of people still that did that. And there's things out there in nature that that do amazing things that we've just forgot about. Like aspirin comes from a frickin' tree, originally.
Yeah.
And things like that. Like, there's things out there that have just been gone. And there was a big push by them. And the other one that was neat was like Thailand, I didn't know this until I lived there, is the largest producer of rice in the world.
Wow.
And they're the single largest. And they brought in mechanized equipment, of course, to speed up. And the king shut it down. Like they took it away because too many people lost their jobs. So they went back to hand picking it because like he wanted the economy to, he's like too many people, like 100 people lost their job from that one machine. We're not doing it that way. Mm-hmm. They outlawed them to keep the society in work. I mean, it's shitty work is better than no work. So it was neat things like that, but you'd never see that here. But not saying that I want to go pick cotton or anything.
No, right.
but when you have limited choices going on, it means something. But yeah, that's what made me think of is just what have we lost over the years that is just natural things, like aside from just the one that's glaring us in the face, like eat whole real foods that we're always preaching and the health benefits of that, compared to like a thing of McNuggets or something. So like what all could we combat just by going back to eating as natural as we can?
And you got to think this stuff like mussels are plentiful. I mean, this, to your point about economy, this is, I'm just looking on Wikipedia, it says it's very important to the economy of New Zealand, I guess. So yeah, it just makes sense that these less consumed things, they could offer something that we haven't really thought about. Think about, all the rainforest stories you hear about all the time, or all the different things in the ocean that we just haven't explored. So it does kind of fit that whole
narrative,
whole thing. Yeah.
All
right. Well, let's go to break. After the break, we're going to talk. Well, Phil, how would you say it? We were talking before we hit the record button.
Well, I just wanted to talk about, like, I'm entering the field of working much more in high school athletics, and I just wanted to talk about the importance of a strength coach that's being ignored. So that's about it.
Okay.
Hey everybody, Iron Radio is back, and in an expanded way. What can you expect? Well, first, you can get it simulcast every week on the nutritionradio.org network, as well as on the original podcast. It'll appear regularly on iTunes, Spotify, and all your favorite podcasting sites. We have a new Iron Radio / Nutrition Radio Facebook page as well. Please check us out. We're even backed up on YouTube. We hope that an expanded presence will get you the news, education, banter, and guests that's made Iron Radio's community so loyal from the start. You are appreciated.
All right, guys, we're back. And I just want to touch on it. It hit me this week. I took a new coaching position with another high school. Mainly, I'm going to be helping the football team. But I will be an offensive line coach, but then also strength coach. So at the high school level in most states, with the exception of like some of the Ohio schools I know about, at the high school level, and like Texas, where football's a religion. Like you go down to Texas and like,
oh yeah,
their high school stadiums are like bigger than colleges here. And like Friday night, it's like that fucking thing will be, a high school game will have 30,000 people at it. Crazy things like that. But one thing that's glaring to me, and like the school I'm going to just had this big to do about firing their head football coach. And okay, we need to have a good about hiring a new one. There's competition in that realm. And it's very, you see it all the time. Like you need to prove yourself. If you don't, you got a couple years. If you don't, you're gone. And we're going to find somebody else that does. One thing that got to me is like, I don't understand why, like of all the coaches you can have, Like we need a basketball coach, a track coach, a football coach, a volleyball coach, a softball coach, a baseball coach. Like all of those coaches, of course, affect that team, that specific sport. There is one coach that could have a positive benefit single-handedly on every sport. And it's the one coach that is not getting hired here. It's a competent strength coach. And I don't know how to bridge that gap. And well, I guess I'm working on it because two to three different schools have hired me now recently. But, like literally it's like, okay, I know some football. I am not Bill Belichick. I will help you there. But like literally my thing is that I can help you on is strength and conditioning, the biggest thing. And, like it's making them understand that can, like literally this could bleed into, like I could help your runners, I could help your volleyball players. This one field could positively benefit every single sport with one paycheck instead of 27. Let this one coach help those coaches and take something like in high school. It's some kind of unwritten rule, and that's like talking to this new head coach. He's like, yeah, I've done strength and conditioning for 15 years. I don't know it. He said, I do it because I have to. It's like by default, when you're hired as a football coach, oh yeah, you're now the strength coach. And it's like, I didn't go to school for that. I didn't study that. I know football, but they just have to take it. They're like, okay, I guess I'm doing that too. And is it the schools being part of it has to be monetary. Like the schools are just being cheap. They're getting 2 for 1. You're just expected. And I don't know why it's the football coach. All of a sudden, the football coach is always the strength coach for all the athletes. But
right,
whatever. It's not like I suppose a lot of what transfers to a football field could transfer to general athletics if they're doing it right. But a lot of times these football coaches are training their athletes like they're power lifters, and it's like it makes no sense. But yeah, I don't know. It's just that, and thinking about it is like, how do we shed light on that to a population that just doesn't understand it? And that's the thing. You have to realize that, like, literally the people hiring these coaches, they don't understand strength and conditioning either, and the impact it could have. And I don't know how to get that message across, but aside from somebody just finally doing it, like in my case, like if they give me 4 years and I show massive benefit, like, oh,
yeah, across sports even.
It's like, okay, that makes sense now. They have something tangible to look at.
That may be part of the answer right there. I mean, you talk about because I agree 100%. They're going to be like, well, we can't afford a strength coach. That's an extra, that's an add-on. It's like, but it's actually economically very smart because it benefits all your kids across all the sports.
Yes.
In fact, you know what? Even at the university level, I think you guys know this, but I would always approach the strength coach first. Most universities at which I worked had a whole strength staff, but smaller schools don't. Sometimes it's a single person or maybe they're outsourced and contracted. But I would always approach the strength coach because, to your point, Phil, the head coaches, to me, they do skill development. Like that's your field. I'm not a football expert, but as a sports nutritionist, I give the strength coach the fuel and the building blocks, or his or her athletes, the fuel and the building blocks to build bigger engines, right? Bigger bodies. I mean, I once had a head coach, football coach, say, Lonnie, we can only recruit 220-pound linemen. That's not big enough. Can you make them 250? Yeah. I'm like, well, not in a year, but by the time they're seniors, I'll overfeed them. But you get the point. I think it's the building the bigger bodies, more strength, more size, and not in every sport. I get it. Like runners don't want huge muscles, but literally fueling and building the adaptations so the athletes are more physically competent. That's not the same thing as skill development. That's what head coaches do. And head coaches are not tissue builder. They don't think like nutritionists and strength coaches, because to me, the sports nutritionist and the strength coach really need to work together. Because if you train them like crazy and they don't have more calories, they don't have the protein or whatever, or they have stupid questions, not stupid questions, but they're buying stupid supplements that don't work or whatever it might be, you could kind of make real progress like that. Yeah, and then it's a good point, Phil, that you help across the board. It's not just the football team.
Well, and I think the thing that's starting to be shed light on is not just the performance aspect you deal with. And we're finally starting to see this. Like, I went to a big high school convention for coaches and for baseball, and they are starting. The light is starting to be shed on the injury prevention of a strength coach.
Right. Yeah.
Like of strength and conditioning. Like the number. Oh, you get proper strength and conditioning, and the injury. Not only their performance goes down or goes up, the number of injuries plummets. With proper strength and conditioning, which, the best thing you can do is be available as an athlete. Like, if you're fucking hurt, you're not worth anything to us. Like, if we can raise availability of athletes up, especially star athletes, that's huge. If they're hurt, they suck. No matter how good you are. It hurts the team.
Years ago, I heard from a strength coach, buddy of mine. He's like, literally, my job description, number one, is injury prevention. It's not performance enhancement.
No.
And that actually, at the time, that surprised me a little, but it makes sense. Yeah. If you are strong and you're not fatigued and gassed, you can do things like lift your feet and your foot and replant it in another direction. So you don't and there goes your knee. Yeah. There's a lot to being stronger and like Mike said, like harder to kill.
Yeah.
This weekend is the NFL draft. And what made me think about this is, like, when you listen to, like, a kid moving from high school to college, the biggest thing I hear about them, it's not skill acquisition. It's, well, this kid's going to be better once he gets into a collegiate strength and conditioning program. And then you have, like, the NFL draft is the top 200 kids out of the United States are getting picked up. And what you resoundingly hear is, well, with 2 years of an NFL strength and conditioning program, he'll be ready. It's like, and how is strength and conditioning not important? I mean, it's glaring you right in the face. Like, the biggest step from college to high school is the strength and conditioning program. The biggest step from top level college to pros is the strength and conditioning program. But yet the strength and conditioning coach is generally the lowest paid and the first fired. Something went wrong. Get a new strength coach. So yeah, it's just this glaring thing, and it's staring us. We have the evidence staring us in the face of how important it is, but it's still ignored. It's just weird to me. And that's not saying that, like, replace all your football coaches with strength and conditioning coaches. That's not the answer. Like, just put somebody in charge of strength and conditioning that literally that's what they know. Like, I'm not going to go hire a soccer coach to train my kid in strength and conditioning. I'm going to hire a soccer coach to train my kid in soccer.
Right. Skills.
It just makes no sense. Yes. So, yeah, no, that's just what was on my head. And I mean, I don't know how all the other states can stay on board. I understand why Texas and like Iowa are different, because the sport itself is a religion there, and they want to take every any little thing they can add to bring their game up. They have reached the point that they do that, whereas other states aren't at that level yet. But you also look at the number of kids that are going on to college, and then the pros the numbers are drastically veered to those states that, like, the number of athletes from Texas, Iowa, Florida that end up in the pros is much greater than other states. And I have to think part of that has to come back to the ability to have a strength and conditioning coach at a young age. Like, they're ahead physically.
You don't have to be an expert in sports nutrition or strength and conditioning just to look and see that high school kids and college young adults, that they're physically growing and developing, right? Yes. Like, you would think that you want to build on that, because no amount of skill, if you've got 11-inch arms, guns, and, your max bench press is 135 pounds, no amount of skill is going to bail you out. I mean, yes, skill is a big deal. And of course it's sports specific, right? But there's no doubt that bigger, more explosive, or just stronger and more explosive athletes, or more, muscular endurance, whatever it is. It's that tweak in the engine through all these kind of maturational windows. It's better for the kid's health for their whole life too, because skill acquisition is something that could fade when you don't practice as much, as you like graduate from college or whatever. But you would think that you're building these, but from a health argument, the broad sports economic argument, it just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's where we're at. And who knows? Maybe 100 years from now, my name will be in a book for helping move this along, but probably not. So I'll probably
It's
be
a
like
shame.
most. Yeah. Just like you walk out on the street and ask somebody to name a head football coach in the NFL, they'll know it. Ask them to name a strength and conditioning coach, and
Right.
the average person has no fucking clue. So
Yeah, it's like being an editor, unsung hero, you know.
Yep.
Mike,
Quietly behind the scenes.
I'm curious if Mike, do you like work? Have you done team related stuff? I know you do a lot of individual stuff, but like, do you ever do stuff with teams?
Not too much. I mean, years ago, I helped coach. I was helping with the strength and conditioning program for a local female soccer team, and did that for quite a while, and a few other things here and there. I've done some nutrition, like you would say, one-off sort of consulting, like, hey, tell us what's wrong with our program, and then we'll hopefully fix it when you're gone because they don't want to pay you any more money.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Which is so hard because it's relatively easy to do. Like, I know you guys have both done this. Like, most programs have huge holes, but if you're in the program, it's hard to see what you don't know just because that's what you've done all the time. But it's so hard because, yes, okay, you give them better information, you give them some logistics stuff. But you don't know what they implemented and what the follow through is. It would just be like a one-off person coming to you saying, hey, I need this program. I'm a new person. Yeah, I can give them a good program, but the odds that it's going to stick, kind of low. But at least for me, it is interesting because to me, it's problem solving. It's just on a bigger level. But yeah, I haven't done too much of it, mostly just because I find ironically, a lot of bigger teams don't want to spend money on it. And then you run into, some of the stuff I've turned down is when you're in direct competition with the people who are the in-house supposed experts, and then they bring you in, and then you just argue and bicker with them the whole time.
That's
so when
what I was going to
too many
mention.
cooks in the kitchen right now, I've turned down some pretty big offers just because I'm like, oh god, this would probably look good and it sounds impressive, but I know historically from having done this, it's going to be a fucking nightmare. So I'm out.
Well, and then you're fighting the bureaucracy. Like I was talking to Windler, and like you can look at the school he deals with, and basically the largest thing that changed is his strength and conditioning. Turn this program around. So he got invited, a strength coach, a coaching staff, I'll keep them unnamed, from a very large college, requested Jim to come in and like look at their program and help them.
Yeah.
And they had it all set up, and then the university itself shut it down.
Yep.
And they said no, because we want to work internally.
Yep.
We want help internally. And it's like, literally the head of your program is requesting this guy to come in and help them. You're not listening to them. And so you're fighting the bureaucracy of the school itself that's just not on board with it. It's like they don't want outside help. They want to deal, like, we know our program's fucked up. Nobody internally is fixing it, but we want help internally. It's like, they haven't done it yet, so I don't know why you think they're going to do it now. They haven't done it over the last years. Yeah,
that kind of head in the sand, ostrich with the head in the sand. Inbred. Like, why is it bad to bring in a subject matter expert to help educate your people?
Yes.
To your point about working with a head coach, I learned this years ago working with a track coach, actually, that I had this sort of recovery-oriented mindset because, I had already seen several of these young women who they didn't have a period, stress fractures. They were clearly like, female athlete triad kinds of stuff. But so I'm like, you need to recover. You need to eat a little bit and recover after you run. And man, that was not in alignment with what he wanted. He was saying, I want their fat asses on the scale every day. The less you weigh, the better your performance. And Lonnie, you're just a bleeding heart nutritionist. I'm like, bro, I have competed as an adult. Have you?
Yeah.
So don't even go there.
Mm-hmm.
But the point being is I learned the lesson of meet with the head coach in advance. What's your philosophy, bud? Right?
Yeah.
Because then I can I'm not going to change what science says, but I can say, listen, recovery is an issue. Your coach is really interested in the body weight to performance ratio. I'm going to say only down to a point, though. Weighing less helps with performance. I get it. Force times distance, the amount of work that someone does, it might help. But he was handing out like charts of the less you weigh, like a direct correlation with here's your race time. And long story short, when I met with the team, in fact, one team I met with, it was a swim team. They said, Dr. Lowry, we want to talk to you without the coach here, because it was just a completely different problem. It was a different scenario. This was not like a female athlete triad thing, but the team culture was such that the coach was not coordinating with them. Anyway, I would think anybody who wants to do stuff like this, go meet with the athletic director or the head coach, football coach, whatever it is, and ask them about their philosophy, so then you can negotiate like what you know to be true, but you can better negotiate rather than come out of the gate with something that contradicts them, I guess.
I would argue that the one area, like some technology centers and especially some high-end military groups, are actually super easy to work with, because they have a whole organized structure of hiring what they call SMEs a lot of times, or subject matter experts, to come in specifically to be like, hey, okay, here's we would do this and do that. And they have processes to implement it. They have people who sign off on who they're going to bring in, what they're going to do. But I think a lot of, especially collegiate and bigger teams, would do better to kind of opt for that model, so that they can hire outside experts. Who's going to decide who they bring in? How are you going to implement it? Like, all that stuff is sort of pre-decided, where in my limited experience, it's kind of like usually you're buddies with someone there, they want to bring you in, and then everybody else hates you. Because there's no system. It's like, oh, you're just a friend of so-and-so, and, you could have the best information ever, and they just don't want to hear it sometimes. Again, not all places are like that, but,
No, you're right. I think the more advanced places are going to have operational, things in place where they can more gracefully accept an SME to help correct certain things. Whereas even small universities, God, it can be frustrating. Like, there's been ones where I had to argue to even get a strength coach, because their head coaches just try to handle it, and it's kind of a disaster a lot of times.
And a lot of times there's no systems, and obviously there's NCAA rules if you're dealing with all that kind of stuff. But, some of the stuff you do is simple. It's like, I find more of it is on the logistics side. Like, okay, like if you're doing nutrition, like, okay, how much money do you have to spend? Okay, assuming we're within NCAA rules, which change all the time, could the players get like a ready to drink protein after they're done training? Or what can we provide? Or what can we do for education? And how do we get that set up? And if they're trying to gain weight, okay, lose weight. I find it's more on the systems logistics side than it is providing more information, because that's how things get done on a day-by-day basis. And you'll have some universities that have, whole training tables and will invest a whole bunch of money in nutrition. And you've got other places that are like, I don't know, we told them to eat more protein. Oh, okay.
Oh, I know.
That's a good start.
No, you know what? And this may be something that, like, Phil will encounter as well. But even at a university level, when you talk about logistics, I remember I had to arrange, and I've said this before on the podcast, but bus trips to a grocer, because they're all living on McDonald's. And I'm like, you guys, this is just a pro-inflammatory. You guys wonder why everybody's got all these inflammatory and injuries, and you eat like hell. You don't time anything around your workouts. And I know there's some debates to the nuances of, I get that, workout timing and nutrition timing and all that. But the point being is, their diet was just, the basics were disaster. So I'm like, how about, every Saturday a bus goes up. Let's get anybody who's interested in actual, career longevity or performance or injury prevention, whatever it is. Let's address this problem, right? Then, like you said, then just the information, just to talk about it. So, yeah.
Well, then, hell, at the college level, you're fighting the NCAA rules too.
Right. That's what
You can't. There's too much protein in that.
Right.
You can't have that. It's over 30% of the total calories. Like, come on, guys.
Yeah. My understanding is in 2017 they softened some of that because they were
did,
really
yeah.
bad up until then. But
Yeah.
man, they had the argument that they used a lot of language in those NCAA documents that I was eye rolling. Like I think it was like concoction or potion, or it's like just stop.
Yeah.
No science educated based, strength coach or sports nutritionist is going to fall for that crap. Potion, concoction, but they also had the argument that it was an equity issue,
right?
That only the schools with money could provide the protein stuff, and protein was more expensive. And yet they didn't seem to have the same rule with the Gatorade and that kind of stuff. And even
that's
though
what
Gatorade,
I found hilarious.
Right, exactly.
The Gatorade was okay. Like some teams could spend whatever they want on Gatorade, but God forbid they spend it on protein. It's like, What are you talking about?
And I get that Gatorade should be cheaper. It's dilute sugar water, but it's sold at a premium price. Don't tell me that that's dirt cheap either.
Yeah.
Right.
So, so that whole equity issue, I thought, it felt a little disingenuous.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the nice part is so I did this with a high-level female team in Florida for soccer again. They don't have any of those rules, which is nice. And one of the things we did was, okay, after a game, who's driving the bus and where do they stop? It's like, okay, I said, well, what's your budget? Okay, so he gives me the budget. Cool. Okay, let's stop here because let me know, are some vegan or some not? Like, what are restrictions do you have? What's your budget? How much do you spend per person? And we had them stop at Chipotle instead of the fried food
That's what I was
place.
gonna say, yeah.
And
instead of Taco Bell.
and you could put out a list of, okay, here's the average cost, here's the options, this will cover every person on your team, here's what you'd recommend, falls within your budget, So a lot of times there's logistics things you can do like that the students were like, hey, this is great. Like it didn't take any more time, didn't cost them any more money, and, it was a lot better.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, let's hope, to Phil's point, that you can show the benefit, across sports of strength development. It's just, obviously it's the kind of thing that we're all doing this podcast because muscles and strength matter. They matter in every aspect of life.
Yep. Like literally
this
every single
podcast for the
too.
money.
Oh gosh.
For the money, right.
So.
All right.
All right, guys. Well, we'll get off our soapbox again. So
That's right.
until next week, everybody have a good one.
Yeah.
Iron Radio is accepting donations. If you like what we do, the professors, the scientists, the bodybuilding show promoters, the athletes themselves in powerlifting and bodybuilding, please consider making a donation or maybe buying something from the ironradio.org store. We also are accepting supporting members. So for $4 a month, which is frankly less than the bank sneaks out of your account in fees, you can step up and support a form of sort of public radio for the bodybuilding and powerlifting and strength community. The Iron Radio podcast and all of the audio on ironradio.org is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, it's important to check with your physician. Also seek the help of registered dietitians, athletic trainers, and qualified exercise physiologists in order to make the progress that you need.